Hello. This mini webinar is going to cover how we blind MCAT and GPA in our process. My name is Dr. Layla Harrison. I'm the Senior Associate Dean for Admissions and Student Affairs at Washington State University, Elson S. Floyd College of Medicine. In our process, we blind metrics after a secondary application has been submitted. So metrics are part of one of our secondary requirements. And we assess them using the undergraduate GPA or UGPA and whatever is the highest MCAT score or percentile rank if you've taken the exam multiple times. And we've established these three combination thresholds that you can meet. You would only have to meet one of them based off of national data that tells us that students who have matriculated with these combinations have been successful in graduating medical school in 4 years. Metrics are important in a process, and in holistic review, what we want to do is we want to balance the assessment of experiences, attributes, and metrics that an applicant shares with us. And so metrics are important, but we assess them at the secondary level based off of national data. So if you can meet one of these undergraduate GPA and MCAT thresholds, along with our other secondary requirements, then you will receive a secondary application. And when you return that back to us, we do blind these in our process. I'll explain that here in a bit. If you have, if your undergraduate GPA does not suffice in helping you meet one of these combinations, and you have graduate work or a graduate degree in a medical science or basic science area, it has to be in one of those, then we will then look at your graduate GPA instead of your undergraduate GPA meeting these thresholds. Now, the GPAs for graduate GPA are different than those outlined here. You can see those on our websites if you want to learn more. So in our process, we, once the secondary application has been submitted back to us, and that is the point at which or prior to receiving the secondary application, that's when we assess GPA and MCAT. But once it's submitted back to us, we actually program our system to blind MCAT and all calculated GPAs in your application. So the next step that happens is that your application is assigned to 2 individuals to provide a screen or to conduct a screen on your application materials without the MCAT and GPA. They're then making recommendations for interviews. The interview process it actually includes nothing about the application. It's a completely blinded interview process for us. And you can learn more about our virtual interview process for this cycle on another webinar available to you. After you interview, then those interview assessments are added to your application, and your file then goes into another review process with admissions committee members. They are then making recommendations to the full admissions committee, and then the full admissions committee meets to make a final assessment on your application. In no part within these stages where an individual is assessing or individuals are assessing your application is your MCAT or GPA available to them. It is completely blinded in our system. And that includes all the way when we're making offers, waitlist determinations, and so on. So from the point of submitting your secondary back to us, all the way through our process, your MCAT and GPA are blinded to us. Why we blind metrics? Blinding metrics allows us to focus on the attributes and experiences that are aligned with our mission. Assessing metrics is one of the easier parts of our process because there's a lot of national data that tells us what applicants or what past applicants have been successful in, or what scores they've achieved, or what grad or GPA they've achieved to be successful in medical schools. There's lots of studies that support that. So they're important, but what's also important to us is an applicant's experiences and their attributes, and in particular, how they align with our own mission and goals. So that allows us, blinding these metrics allows us to focus on those other important pieces. Additionally, we don't have to continue to reassess metrics if they're informed by data, if our thresholds are informed by data as they are, and we just need to assess them once. Once we've assessed them, they remain static, and so we can move on from there, and that's why we blind metrics in our process. Now, as I mentioned, does it mean that MCAT and GPA are not as important? Not at all. In fact, they're very important. But the holistic review is about balancing them with experiences and attributes. And there is enough evidence that tells us that metrics predict performance later on in medical school, particularly in the preclinical years and on the USMLE Step 1. So metrics remain important. It's really important for medical schools to enroll students who we believe, or there's evidence that tells us that they are very likely to be successful, including maybe those that may be a little bit at risk, but that we have resources to support them. Medical education is not, it's an expensive endeavor, not only for medical students, but also in the case of us, we're a public medical school, for the communities within our states. So we have to do due diligence in enrolling medical students who we have evidence that they will be successful in our curriculum. As I mentioned, in the way that we blind metrics is that we actually program our system to do this. So it removes MCAT and GPA from the application materials when the application goes into review and all the way through. There is, so as I mentioned, no human in our process ever sees your MCAT or GPA in making any of our decisions. If you have any questions at all about this, feel free to reach out to our team. All of the information I provided in this mini webinar is also available on our website. Thank you.